This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, last thing I'm going to ask you about, and it's about Myles Garrett. We've seen what he's been able to do, and I love the line that you put out there on Twitter where you said he was Mike Trout in a lineup of minor league hitters or something like that last year. They completely changed up the lineup, right? You got Za'Darius, you got Shelby Harris, you got Dalvin Tomlinson, you draft Siaki Ika to be a rotational guy inside. It looks like Maurice Hurst might be able to make the team and be a pretty nice depth piece for you at defensive tackle. You also got Obo as well as another kind of piece in there. You draft Isaiah McGuire, and all of a sudden the outlook of that defensive line looks different. Obviously, Jim Schwartz is in there, so more experience on the defensive side when it comes to the coaching aspect of it. And we've seen Myles look better than he's had in years past in camp. Maybe part of that's just because he's more excited about what he's being asked to do this year. But let's live in a world where Myles Garrett takes a leap from where he already is. Where do you think that is for Myles, right? Because we're talking about a guy going from 16 to 20? Like, that's insane to have an expectation like that. But I feel like that's where it's at with him.
He's a mutant, man. He is one of the few NFL mutants. And people all offseason have said the same things. He looks better than ever. Philadelphia people were singing his praises. Yes, the goal for Myles Garrett I think he's a generational talent who's been dealing with generational dog shit. Sorry to cuss on the show. He is a generational talent who's been dealing with generational poor surroundings on these defensive lines. And if he has the help we know he has now, with the depth paired with it, with a guy calling the defense, predicating the front portion of his defense to allowing Myles to thrive, the goal should be to break the sack record. He is good enough to do that. His goal should be Defensive Player of the Year. The stars have to align right for those things, right? They have to win enough ball games. He has to be a big part of it. He has to stay healthy. There's a lot there that he doesn't always control, but he should be in the running. As far as he should be just like Nick is one of the higher favorites to be the NFL's rushing leader, Myles is at the top of the food chart, right? For the pecking order for his position. Mm-hmm. And again, we talked about Nick, the stars aligning around him for the opportunity, for the scheme, for the player, for the situations he's facing from the opposing side of the football. You're talking about the same things here. Two defensive tackles that are actual meaningful football players. Two edge players opposite him who are meaningful football players. Mm-hmm. They cannot, I'm telling you, they cannot solely devote two people to Myles and at times three people to Myles all the time. They're going to get crushed by that. So he has now the opportunity. His body's in the right place. He's a mature individual. The whole repertoire of pass rush moves is there. You got a defensive coordinator who says, I don't care how you get there, just get there. It's all lining up, man. And he doesn't have to break the sack record to be the Defensive Player of the Year, but again, it doesn't mean if he doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year, it's not a great year. But the threshold is the top of the position in pressures, approaching the top of the positions in sacks, and his goal that I'm sure is on his chart, break the damn sack record and be the Defensive Player of the Year. We should be expecting that. Now, there's obviously, around that, there's interpretation and people understanding that circumstances hit, but that he's a freak of nature. I'm sure you've covered camp live too, like I have. You get up close to him. How are we cut from the same cloth? You have the same bones I do. It doesn't even add up. He is that wild of a person to see up close. And imagining trying to block a guy who moves that quickly, who triggers that quickly, but can rip through your chest with a power move. That's it's unbelievable. So the only thing stopping Myles would be Myles. We saw last year where the speeding thing happened and the accident happened, and Like I think he was disgruntled. You would agree with me that on tape he was disgruntled by who was surrounding him and the general approach of the defense. He made some comments while not openly questioning what they were doing. He was doing that, and I understood why he would be doing that. The direction is better this year. The surrounding talent is better around him, and he should be in a really good place, man.
And in every aspect, he was better than he was in 2021 last year. All of that was going on. And he matched his sack total. He had more TFLs than he had the year before. He had more forced fumbles, and he did it in 15 starts.
And if you to think he was beat up, he took a flipped over car, missed a
early
week
in the season,
and was back trying to play. Like he did that with a body that how bad it is to get in any car accident, let alone flipping your thing on the roof at 90. Like if he's healthy and the body's right, I'm telling you, man, this guy should hit the 20 sack number. He should. And if not, they should be collectively so good that they should be in the discussion for best defensive lines across the league. That's how much talent I think they have.
And if you look at him and his numbers since 2019, 10 sacks, 10 games, he hits Mason Rudolph with the helmet. Okay, but he was on pace for 16. 2020, he played 14 games, ended up missing a couple because of COVID. We saw what that did to him. He wasn't quite the same player at the end of 2020 that he had been at the beginning. Still got 12. You can make the argument he doesn't get COVID. He definitely hit 16. We're talking about 4 16-sack seasons in a row. And that was the sack record for the Cleveland Browns, right? Like 4 times he breaks that record like it's nothing, to the point where we kind of take it for granted. And I think the most impressive quote that I heard from somebody in Philadelphia was, "I take Myles Garrett over Nick Bosa in half a heartbeat." Nick Bosa is a good player, and that's just where Myles is.
Yeah, put it this way, they're happy to have who they have. I really do believe that. Now, Myles is, it's not always been perfect, right? There have been bumps in the road, but he has not been with a coordinator like Robert Saleh and surrounded with the defensive line talent that we don't need to go into names here, but some of the others that get respect at the position. This is the first year he'll have 3 guys who mean something next to him and 5 guys that can actually really, really help across that board. So you see those charts in the middle of the season with the double team rate, with the sack win rate, all that.
And Myles is all the way in the right.
He should not be on that double team rate as high as he has been. I think if he is, you start to say, how can they not figure that out? And I'll say this, if he is, and they haven't air quotes figured that out, but everybody else, Okoronkwo's got 6 sacks at that point. Z's got, 7, 8, 9, and he's pushing the crazy pressure threshold he was last year. Then that makes sense. You want to pick your poison and you want to go one-on-one with Z and Oko and all those guys. Do your thing. You're like, the thing I'm saying is, if it's mid-season and they're not producing the pressures and sacks and results defensively we wanted, and Myles is still highly, highly double-teamed, triple-teamed at a rate that is ridiculous, we'll start to scratch our head and what's going on here. But the thing that you would hope is it's one of 2 outcomes. He's dominating because he's severely less double-teamed, or it's the opposite. He's getting double-teamed at this still ridiculously high rate because he's a mutant. We can't do anything unless we double-team him, and that's freeing up big starts to the season for the 3, 4 other guys that we're talking about here, both of which those routes are very plausible. So exciting. It really is, man. And you start to think like, man, they got all this upfront talent. If they just had secondary, you know what? They do have some pretty good secondary talent back there. So, all right, this is why this defense should be really good. And I think that's how you can get to, how do I get to the point where I believe in the Cleveland Browns? Go through the thought process that we just did. You'll get there.
Oh, yeah. If Myles Garrett and Deshaun Watson play up to the level of expectation, that creates a million problems for every coaching staff that has to game plan against Cleveland Browns, right? That makes it a lot harder to play against the Cleveland Browns. And I think people know that, right? They're like, hey, if that team gets good, if those 2 play to the level that they're doing, then it's going to be tough that week because we have to go if this, then that, and that.
Think about this. As I was talking about this on my podcast with someone just yesterday. Think about the weakness. I think we would all perceive the weakness of that defense to be the second level linebacker group, right? JOK's
Mm-hmm.
talented, but he's got to put another good season together. Walk talented, coming off a big injury. They have three pretty good safeties here. Rodney McLeod is Jim Schwartz's boy. He knows this defense like the back of his hand. He will be playing. Juan Thornhill, coverage savant. Tackling can get a little spotty, but a coverage savant that you like having him in your back half. Let's put Grant Delpit up and let him play a little linebacker. You know who led the NFL in run stops? Those plays that constitute a failure for the offense.
Mm-hmm.
You know who led the NFL in those from the safety position last year? Grant Delpit. You want to put a little more speed on the field? Put a little 4-1-6 out there. See what happens. Get crazy. They have such an opportunity here to get wild. Like, I picture, and again, I don't like to bring up this name because it can bring a little bit of a recoil from Browns fans, but John Johnson in LA before he came to Cleveland, Brandon Staley was getting funky with him. He was everywhere. He was a linebacker. He was a walk-up mug tight end one-on-one lock. We got to cover George Kittle this week. He's going to run with him everywhere. They should be doing that with Grant Delpit. He should be the ace up your sleeve, move him all around type of player. And if they do that, send him on some blitzes, get creative, let him cover Mark Andrews this week, and you kind of zone surround him and box him in. It's there, man. There's so many pieces of this defense that they can get funky with and have a lot of fun. So we all talk about the offense, and I know you brought me on here to talk about the offense largely, but the defense and the tools they have on that side, what kind of gets me the most excited, because boy, it's there, man. It's really there.
Yeah, imagine they're able to rock like San Francisco used to, where they could just live with 5 guys in the box and be fine. It's like, oh, okay, what do you do then, right? Because not only you have those guys in the box, but like you got Denzel Ward out there, you got Greg Newsome, you got 3 corners you feel really good about, 3 safeties that you feel really good about. It's 6 guys in the back end that you feel like these are high quality players we could throw out there and can do things well.
And name 3 secondary players for San Francisco off the top of your head. It's tough.
It was what?
It's not easy.
I'm thinking back then, was it Eric Reed still on the team?
Exactly. We're doing that. If we're
they
doing
have Tre'Davious Ward,
they have not had really good, highly invested secondary people. So, like, to me, like what I turned on San Francisco and what I loved about their ability to send for, their guys up front played with their like hair on fire. They played so hard up front, and that's what I want to see from this team exclusively, is like a unit up front that loves what they're doing and is playing so passionately and hard. So I'm pretty pumped about the group up front. We're talking here about heavy investments in the back half and getting funky with the linebackers when you can. Like, there's just there's a good defense here. There's a really good defense here that I think the NFL is still sort of sleeping on, and I hope they get a chance to shine. I think they will.
Yeah, real quick, lastly, how do you think teams are going to approach the Browns offense at the beginning of the year? Do you think they're going to just assume that Deshaun is back to being Deshaun, or are they going to kind of go with a wait and see kind of approach and just still game plan against the Browns running game as the main thing? Like, how do you think, if you're the coach going against the Browns in that first 4 weeks of the season before we really know what's up with the team, how do you approach them?
I think if I had to guess, I think teams will challenge Deshaun to prove he's Deshaun again. I think the teams will say, and I know what you were asking a good question earlier about when defenses start to do X, Y, and Z for Nick. They're still going to go into the game saying we have to stop Nick Chubb. And when Deshaun does week over week over week, deep shot throws or scramble chaos situations, make things happen, when he starts doing that again and they start to fear Elijah, they start to fear Cedric Tillman getting in there, moving around a little bit, doing some different things. When that clicks, which there's a chance it's early, that's when this offense could get really fun. Because I do think your question is very valid. Defensive coordinators go into their meetings early in the week and they say, who do we have to stop? If we have to stop Nick, how do we have to do it? Well, they know where their vulnerabilities are. They know that. Talk about the great play callers in the NFL. Talk to the opposite side of the ball about what are the vulnerabilities of any defense that you put out there. I expect Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati to have a good game plan. They always do. But they're going to try to stop Nick, and they should. They should not want Nick Chubb to just devour them. But from those risks, of doing that, which is usually creeping an extra body into the box to try to gap out the run game, you do leave yourself vulnerable to seams. You leave yourself vulnerable to island secondary play. And listen, they got Cam Taylor-Britt's a nice young player. They drafted the DJ Turner kid from Michigan. They got some young talent, but this is new for some of these guys. And like, if they're going to be willing to put these youngsters and these new safeties, Daxton Hill, on an island against David, against Amari, against Elijah, you better burn them, because I do think teams are going to go into the game saying, we know the Browns have proven 24 behind this O-line and David as a blocking tight end. They can run it. We know that. Let's take that away. Let's challenge them to throw it. And I think the pieces are now around them at the wide receiver position, and David and Akins, that they should be able to hurt teams who schematically try to take away the run game. So your question, again, is spot on. I expect early season, stop Nick at all costs, prove to us, Deshaun, who you are. And then once he does that, there's going to be a game in that first 5. I don't know what it is, week 4, the Ravens, or somebody's going to be like, all right, they're playing too deep all the time. They're really worried about this. And, we'll probably DM each other and say, hey, you noticed it, I noticed it, and it's on now. It's on now. That's what they should be chomping at the bit for, is, hey, you want to come up and you want to gap us out? We're going to beat you. We're going to find ways to pick that apart. Oh, you want to sit back in too high shell? That's fine. We'll run inside zone. We'll RPO you to death. We'll do some things from gun run that are just going to punish, you leaving a gap unfit. And Nick is going to he's going to punish you. So again, exciting stuff here, man, for them on both sides. If Deshaun is Deshaun, it's exciting.
And that's what good football teams are, right? They have wide margins of different ways that they can win. And the more ways you have to be able to win a football game, the more football games you're just going to win on average, right? Last year, their issue was there was really 1 or 2 ways that they can win a football game. The game had to roll out 1 or 2 ways. It couldn't be moving too fast. It couldn't be too high scoring. The defense couldn't be too leaky, or else they would have to play from behind. They're not a team that was able to play from behind well. The reason you bring in Deshaun, the reason you bring in Elijah, is so you have those opportunities and the versatility to win multiple different types of football games, because that gives you the best chance to win most of your games throughout the season, right? You look at all the good teams, they have multiple ways to win. Defensively, they can win themselves a game, hopefully. You can win yourself a game offensively with the run game, with the passing game, different types of ways, different types of styles, however you can get there. You want to be good at multiple different things as a team. And this is why we get so confused in camp, right? Because they'll practice the thing that they're good at. And we're like, oh, this is a good team. This offense should be fine. And then we realize that's the only way that they can play the game, right? If things break a different way, then all of a sudden it looks different, right? It's why first drives always look great, right? Because that's the way that they can play. If they're able to play that way, they'll be fine. But stuff happens during the game that takes that stuff away. And if you can't do that, then what you can do is that's how teams end up losing. So I think that's going to be a vital part. Jake, thank you for coming on. Make sure you check out Jake at the OBR. Check out his podcast on Spotify and everywhere where podcasts are currently available. Is there anywhere else I'm missing?
That's it. OBR Film Breakdown Pod is about the only place you'll hear me yapping. So, I appreciate it, man. I say it every time. Big fan of your work. Love your channel. And always glad to come on and join whenever I can.
Definitely, Jake. Thank you for being on. Everybody else, y'all have a great day. Have a good day.